It's the time to get down.
It involved a tribe of Indians, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this correctly, called the Havasupai in Arizona. They lived deep in the Grand Canyon, and they had had a problem for a long time with high rates of diabetes that had caused severe health problems, including amputations and death. And somehow they got connected with a researcher at Arizona State University who set about to try to find if there was some kind of genetic variation in the tribe that would lead to these high rates of diabetes and see if there was some way to help them. Now, at the time, she says that she got broad consent agreements to study various mental or various behavioral and medical disorders in an effort to try to find the relevant genetic markers that might influence this. And included among her studies were genes for schizophrenia, metabolic disorders, alcoholism. Ultimately, it all came to no end, and she was not able to find any kind of genetic reason for the high rates of diabetes. And the blood was kept in a freezer, and that was pretty much the end of that study. Several years later, a graduate student found the blood in the freezer and decided that he wanted to use that blood to do some further studies. He thought he might have some ideas about how to find some genetic variants that might cause the problem. Now, in the course of the study, he found a lot of things. It was broad-ranging scientific research, as scientific research tends to be when you don't know exactly what you're looking for. You look at a whole lot of stuff to try to heuristically winnow down the actual target of what you're trying to find out. One of the members of the tribe was at the university for a presentation of this graduate student's dissertation, in which he revealed a number of things that were found in the study, one of which that the tribe had a lot of inbreeding, which ran counter to the beliefs of the tribe, as it does run counter to the beliefs of most tribes.
Most people do.
Also, it was discovered through the genetic information that the ancestry of this tribe was Asian in origin, and that they had most likely crossed the Bering Strait and come into North America in that way, which is the pathway that is assumed that a lot of Native American tribes and North American tribes got onto this continent. And the belief of the tribe and the stories that they tell and their lore is that the tribe originated deep in the Grand Canyon, and that they were appointed by their deities or whoever. I don't really know the full backstory there, but they have been assigned guardianship of the Grand Canyon. So the findings of this study, or these particular findings, which were part of a broad range of findings in this study, ran counter to the belief system of the tribe. So in the presentation, this member of the tribe who was there stood up and asked, "Did you have permission to use the blood for this study?" That's where the ethical dilemma comes in. The tribe sued the university, and very recently, the university settled with them, and a cash settlement, scholarships, various things. In the long run, the settlement probably does not hurt the university that much. It's less than they were spending to defend themselves, and it may benefit the tribe. So that part of it doesn't bother me. It's the question of, once you donate a specimen for scientific study, how much and how detailed control do you have over it? Informed consent is a legal term that it's required for most all scientific studies involving humans, and it was designed primarily when people were involved in experimental surgeries or experimental drug trials or things of that nature, that you had to get informed consent to protect them or to indemnify yourself if the studies were to inflict some kind of injury on the party, that they were voluntarily participating in the study and that they knew the risk. That was the informed consent part. They know what's being risked. In this case, there was no physical risk to any member of the tribe. Now, as I understand it, and I could be wrong here, the graduate student who was doing this was actually in a broad sense pursuing the idea of trying to find genetic variants that might cause the diabetes. Now, in the course of that, he found other information. Now, the question is, if you are pursuing something legitimately and find information that might upset people, do you have an obligation to report the information, or do you have an obligation to hide it and get their permission to disclose the information?
Well, what I wanted to do was to demonstrate, and not really tackle these issues, Vic, but to demonstrate the multitude and the complexity of the issues that be
Right.
relating to DNA. It's not just this. It's the fact that people are patenting genes.
Right. Right. You're not looking
Patenting genes. So
Right.
that means and some of us, now remember, this is where I get back to my hippy dippy side, because I think that you should not be allowed to patent genes. But people talk about the research, but I am insulted by that, probably in the same ways that the Native Americans felt when people started to fence off the land.
Right. I understand.
How is that yours to take?
Well, let me ask you this
Okay,
question.
how is that yours to take?
There's always been this rule that I believe exists, and please understand, I am not in corporate law, nor have I had any background, it's just an opinion. The argument is that the worst that can happen to us is to pay them. And for us, it's more profitable. We will not reach some agreement where they say cease, desist, turn over all your data, your science, your development, your product, all that has to be burned in trash. That does not exist. And I think when you have a foundation, whether it's against this tribe, which I feel really bad about, but we know there are other stories like this, isn't this what it's about? If you were on the other side of the fence, Martin, you was representing corporate interests or discovery as it relates to scientific discovery or what have you. Isn't it easy to say, look, eventually we're going to have to pay them when they decide to argue with us. We'll do that. But you know what? We're moving forward with this. Where's the cease and desist? You can't do this any longer because years have gone by. Is there a penalty for that?
No, because, and the problem really, no. And the issue is, it's beyond the scope of anyone to imagine at that state and time
Right.
what would occur in the future.
True.
That who would imagine that you'd be dealing with your DNA?
See, and no
I
one
mean,
can.
who would imagine that?
Well, now we're getting the education of how far in advance special interests, whatever they are, scientific or to the betterment of life, longevity of life, and it's not always because they want to take advantage of folks, but we know that everything is a cost factor. You can't get into discovery, whether you can't get into research. Everything passes along a cost, and there has to be a profit to progress. And there had to be a profit here. You know why? Are we looking at the state of what it calls, what you said, they want to take your DNA. For what purpose? What is the sole purpose to take your DNA? What? To become more profitable? To extend life? To replicate life? What is the